Welcome, dear listener. Tonight we will travel to America, the land of the free. Let the deep, familiar quiet of the evening settle around you. We are not going to the battlefield tonight. We are travelling back, far back, to a time just before the thunder, to a place where the air felt heavy with an unspoken, invisible tension. We are journeying to the American colonies, in the years just before the American Revolution, a time defined not by chaos, but by waiting. If this cosy story helps you drift off, please subscribe, tap like, and leave a gentle comment. Your support keeps the journey continues. Your task as you listen is to become a part of this quiet world. You're a simple colonist, a quiet observer, living a slow, methodical life in a small coastal town or a damp, forested farm. You're anchored to the endless cyclical work of the land and the simple rhythm of the ocean. This is the quiet before the storm. It is a stillness so deep, so absolute, that it is almost terrifying. The world of your small colonial town is one of deep, enduring peace. You are anchored to the simple, honest rhythm of life. The changing seasons, the steady needs of your farm or trade, the familiar low murmur of your neighbours' lives. But this profound, predictable quiet is under siege. The enemy is not a massive army, not a dramatic thunderclap of war, but the silent, insidious power of paper and law. The trouble begins not with a shout, but with a barely perceptible tightening. A quiet, dry intrusion into the very fabric of your peaceful, monotonous routine. You are sitting in your small office, or perhaps at the worn wooden table in your home. You are not a politician or a revolutionary. You are simply a person who requires documents to live. A merchant, a lawyer, a printer, or a farmer signing a deed. You reach for a piece of official paper, a will, a bill of sale, a contract or a newspaper, and you notice the difference. There, on the corner of the document, is the small ugly mark of the Stamp Act. The mark itself is insignificant. A tiny embossed seal, a small piece of decorative officialdom. But the weight of that seal is immense. It is the tangible evidence of an invisible, unhearing power located 3,000 miles across the endless, indifferent ocean. You realise that a portion of the value of this small, mundane object now belongs to a power that knows nothing of your daily struggles, your local climate, or the rhythm of your particular town. This knowledge is not a spark of immediate rebellion. It is a profound, unshakable unrest that settles deep in your belly. The tension is so low-grade, so bureaucratic, that it is almost maddening. You cannot fight the paper with a sword, you cannot argue with a seal. You're forced into a profound, weary act of student protest. A protest that is conducted solely in the quiet, empty spaces of your own mind. You look at the paper, you feel the rough texture of the stamp beneath your thumb. You know that you must pay the tax, or the document has no validity, and your entire carefully constructed life could collapse. The tax is not merely money, it is a quiet, daily admission of servitude. A little slice of your freedom claimed by an abstract power. The anxiety this creates is a deep psychological burden. It is the anxiety of constant low-level surveillance. You're not being watched by an army, you're being watched by the legal system. Every document, every contract, every small act of commerce is now being silently recorded, measured and taxed by an officialdom that has never stepped foot on your soil. This tension spreads not through loud meetings, but through whispers in the taverns and long, silent looks shared between neighbours. You sit by the fire at the local meeting house, listening to the low, tired murmur of conversation. No one is shouting about independence. They are quietly, wearily debating the legality of the tax, the cost of the paper, the logistics of non-compliance. It is a slow, intellectual, and deeply frustrating tension that settles over the entire community like a heavy, unseen fog. The Stamp Act is eventually repealed, but the act of repeal brings no immediate comfort. The tension simply shifts. You realise that the power to tax, the power to legislate without your consent, still exists. The peace you once knew was not a right, it was merely a temporary privilege granted by a distant government. You are left with a permanent, quiet suspicion. You can no longer trust the silence. You can no longer trust the ordinary routine. You know that at any moment another ship can arrive, bearing another stack of heavy sealed documents that will once again undermine the fragile peace of your quiet colonial life. Let the cold, dry language of the law settle your own mind. Allow the profound, quiet anxiety of the unseen system to lull your thoughts into a state of heavy, suspended animation. You're merely watching the paper. You're merely waiting for the next ship. You're simply the recipient of a silence that can no longer be trusted. The unspoken tension of the laws, the quiet anxiety that began with a tax on a simple piece of paper, now rests entirely on your shoulders. You are not a politician, not a soldier, and not a fiery orator. You are the Continental mail rider, and your burden is the simple heavy weight of distance and the relentless wearing monotony of the long road. Your life is a sequence of slow, solitary rituals. You rise before the sun, before the blacksmith has even fully stoked his fire. Your clothes are thick, rough leather, perpetually stiff with road dust and morning dew. You do not carry a sword or a gun, you carry a sealed leather pouch, and within that pouch rests the entire fragile network of colonial communication. You mount your horse, a sturdy, necessary beast whose simple intelligence is your only companion for hours on end. The rhythm begins instantly. It is a slow, steady, hypnotic beat of hooves on packed earth, a sound that quickly consumes all other noise. This sound is the metronome of the revolution. It is the sound of time being measured not by a clock, but by distance. You ride through forests so immense and wild and silent that the world seems to have ended just behind your horse's tail. The trees loom, massive and dark, and the only break in the deep quiet is the occasional faint rattle of the dried leaves caught in the bridle. You must stay alert, but the endless sameness of the path is a constant, exhausting siege against your focus. Imagine the absolute monotony of this journey. The terrain changes, but the task never does. You are a human vessel of information, forced to move at the speed of a tired horse, carrying news that is weeks, sometimes months, old by the time it reaches its destination. The urgency of the words in the pouch, the arguments, the debates, the worried questions, is entirely undermined by the slowness of your travel. You are the quiet conduit through which a revolution must be organised, and you are constantly reminded that the greatest enemy of colonial unity is not the Redcoats, but the sheer, unforgiving distance between them. The waiting you impose on others is immense. You ride 100 miles to deliver a letter from Boston to Philadelphia. The recipient reads it in an hour, writes a response in an afternoon, and then must wait another week for your return to carry their response back. The entire process of political communication is defined by weeks of profound, agonizing corpulence, a sense that is filled only with doubt and second-guessing. Your saddle is your home. The rhythmic creak of the leather beneath you becomes the sound of your own breathing. Your thoughts, at first sharp and clear, slowly dissolve into the rhythm of the road. You fall into a trance-like state, a necessary blankness where you are no longer thinking about the letters you carry, but only about the next rise in the road, the next cool stream. The next moment you must dismount to check your horse's shoes. You stop by the solitary, occasional tavern or rough way station. You do not speak much. Your job is to listen, to observe, and to remain an unreadable, quiet vessel. You eat your simple meal, listen to the low, tired murmur of the other travellers, and then you return to the hypnotic rhythm of the road. The deep quiet of the forest is your final, ultimate challenge. Sometimes in the deepest part of the day, or under the vast, unmoving cold of the midnight stars, the silence becomes so complete that it begins to ring in your ears. It is a silence that feels personal, a profound isolation that forces you to confront the weight of the single leather pouch that separates your world from absolute meaninglessness. Your existence is a contradiction. You are the vital link, the single point of failure for the entire political movement, yet you are the most invisible, the most quiet, the most monotonously routine element of the revolution. Let the soft, hypnotic rhythm of the horse's gait settle your own body. Allow the deep, profound silence of the vast, empty road to quiet your mind. You are simply moving. You are simply delivering. You are simply the necessary link, carrying the burden of distant communication with a quiet, unyielding patience. You are no longer in the quiet solitude of your farm or the vast emptiness of the postal road. You're in Boston, the heart of the growing friction, and your quiet has been invaded by a palpable physical presence. The tension that began as ink on paper is now embodied in the constant, unmoving figures of the Redcoats. The silence here is not the deep, peaceful quiet of the forest. It is a cold, brittle, strained silence, perpetually on the verge of shattering. You walk through the narrow, crowded streets, and your movements are now fundamentally different. Every act, every glance, every conversation is conducted under the gaze of a silent alien power. You cannot escape the sight of them. They are stationed on the street corners, standing in pairs outside the custom houses, or pacing the docks with a slow, deliberate rhythm that grates against the natural, bustling chaos of the town. The sound that defines your existence now is the guard's pace. It is the slow, rhythmic thud, thud of heavy, polished leather boots striking the uneven cobblestones. It is a sound that carries a weight beyond the simple footstep. It is the constant, audible reminder that you are being watched and measured. This pace is never rushed. It is a slow, methodical rhythm that signifies absolute control and unmoving patience. The sound is so consistent, so predictable, that it becomes a maddening low-frequency hum beneath the surface of your life. You look at the soldiers. They are young, often bored, and utterly silent. They stand at attention for hours, their muskets held perfectly still, their bright red coats a jarring, aggressive colour against the muted tones of the colonial buildings. They do not talk to you. They do not threaten you loudly. Their power lies entirely in their unmoving stillness. Imagine having to live your entire day, buying bread, visiting a friend, reading a newspaper, under the unblinking, bored gaze of a person who is simply waiting. Their silence is the most potent weapon. It forces you to question your own movements. Did I walk too fast? Was my glance too long? Did my neighbour whisper too loudly? The silence of the Redcoat forces your own internal dialogue to become a continuous, nervous cross-examination. The only breaks in this heavy silence come at precise, regulated times. The distant, high-pitched bugle call that signals the changing of the guard, or the sharp, coordinated snap of their muskets being grounded during a drill. These sounds are not random noise. They are moments of sudden, absolute order, serving only to remind you that behind the silence, there is a massive, tightly controlled mechanism ready to be deployed. Even at night, the silence of the Redcoat is profound. You lie in bed, struggling to find the deep, restful sleep you once knew. But your ear is strained, listening past the fire and past the familiar sounds of your home. You are listening for the faint, steady clip-clop of the mounted patrol in the distant street. The sound, a constant, quiet assurance that even in your sleep you are being watched, guarded, and controlled. This continuous low-level tension, this silent physical occupation, is the true furnace of the revolution. It is not the sound of a gun, but the lack of it. The pervasive sense that the atmosphere is so charged, so strained, that any sudden, loud noise could trigger an immediate fatal response. The Redcoats' watch is an exhausting, soul-numbing act of endurance for both sides. They are bored, cold, and far from home, forced into a monotonous vigil. You are frustrated, silent, and forced to endure a constant cold pressure in your own streets. The battle is not fought with muskets. It is fought with patience and unmoving silence. Let the slow, rhythmic thud of the soldier's pace settle your own thoughts now. Allow the cold, unblinking stillness of the constant watch to quiet your mind. You're merely enduring. You're merely observing the deep, tense silence that precedes the final, loud break. The tension has reached its absolute peak. It is the final, heavy silence that precedes the breaking of a storm. You're not in the chaotic city now, but on the cold, damp village green of Lexington, or perhaps standing silently on a rocky hill overlooking Concord. You're one of the militiamen or a civilian observer, a silent participant in a profound, terrifying moment of collective stillness. The hours that have just passed were filled with hurried whispers, the soft clink of metal on metal as you loaded your ancient musket, and the low, urgent murmur of men deciding their fate. But now it is the hour of no sound. The air is bitterly cold and wet with the heavy dew of the pre-dawn. You are standing in a line of other men, farmers, shopkeepers, ordinary men, who look as exhausted and bewildered as you feel. There is no shouting, no drumming, and no heroic posing. There is only a profound collective hush. Your mind is consumed not by bravery, but by the relentless wearing fatigue of waiting. You've been awake for over 30 hours, running from town to town, receiving confused, contradictory messages. Your body is heavy, stiff, and aches with the damp cold that seeps up from the ground. Your greatest enemy in this moment is not the approaching redcoats. It is the overwhelming urge to simply lie down in the grass and surrender to sleep. You look down at your musket. It is cold, heavy, and unreliable. Your fingers are numb, and you realize you cannot feel the trigger. This numbness is a form of survival. Your body has entered a state of profound protective detachment. The only sounds are those that emphasize the stillness. The occasional nervous cough from a man 2 places down, the soft rattle of the ramrod in your own musket as you shift your weight, and the sound of your own shallow, silent breath. Then you hear their sound. It begins not as a march, but as a subtle rhythmic vibration in the earth far down the road. It grows slowly, methodically, the disciplined, relentless thump, thump, thump of hundreds of perfectly synchronized boots. It is a terrifying sound because it is so ordered. It is a machine approaching. You cannot see them, but the sound tells you everything you need to know. They are many, they are trained, and they are coming for you. The sound of their advance is so monotonous, so steady, that it's almost hypnotic. It is the sound of an inevitable outcome. Your commander gives a low, terse order. You stand perfectly still. You are not thinking about freedom or independence. You're thinking about the simple, cold reality of the wooden stock pressed against your cheek. You're thinking about the smooth, damp metal of the barrel. You're thinking about not moving. The final moment of silence is the most intense. They are now visible. A long red line, perfectly formed, their bayonets gleaming dully in the first weak light of the rising sun. They stop. The only sound left is the immense collective holding of breath, the air caught in the throats of over 100 men, both British and American. The 2 armies stand in profound, terrified silence. The time for talking is over. The time for running is past. All that remains is the simple, honest stillness of 2 opposing forces waiting for the final arbitrary signal. Your greatest effort now is simply to endure the wait, to remain unmoving, to resist the overwhelming urge to break the heavy, charged silence. The whole encounter lasts only a few minutes, but it feels like the longest, slowest day of your life. It is the deep, final stance that precedes the noise, a moment so still, so complete, that it absorbs all the tension of the preceding years. Let the cold, dew-laden stillness of the pre-dawn field settle your own mind now. Allow the heavy, immovable focus of the waiting militiaman to quiet your thoughts. You are simply holding your breath. You are simply waiting for the inevitable sound that will break the world's peace. The sharp, terrifying sound of the first shots at Lexington has long faded. But the revolution is not solely fought with powder and lead. It is also fought here, in this quiet, dignified, candle-lit room in Philadelphia, where the true weight of the conflict is measured in ink and parchment. You are not a soldier. You are a scribe or an observer, perhaps one of the assistants to the great minds, Jefferson, Adams, Franklin, who are engaged in a battle of pure intellect. Your quiet is the cold, tense silence of intense, collaborative thought. The atmosphere in this room is one of profound intellectual fatigue. The outside world is loud with rumours of war, with news of small skirmishes and mounting casualties. But inside, the silence is almost absolute. It is the silence that is necessary for precision. Every word must be perfect. Every sentence must be an absolute truth. Every comma must be a matter of life and death. You sit at a long, polished wooden table. The air is still, heavy with the scent of aged wood, dust, and fresh iron gall ink. The most immediate sound is the soft, rhythmic scratch, scratch, scratch of a quill pen on heavy vellum. This is the sound of a new world being slowly, deliberately inscribed into existence. You watch the writer, perhaps Jefferson himself. He is not writing in a furious burst of inspiration. He is writing with agonizing patience. He dips the tip of the quill into the inkwell with a slow, deliberate movement. He holds the pen suspended for a long moment, staring at the blank space on the parchment. He is searching not just for the right word, but for the quietest, most unassailable word, the one that will carry the weight of a revolution without screaming. The silence that fills the room is one of shared intellectual pressure. The other delegates sit quietly, waiting. They are not waiting for an army to march, they are waiting for a sentence to be born. They are waiting for a phrase that will justify the blood already shed. They are waiting for the perfect, quiet articulation of an ideal. Imagine the immense, heavy quiet when a single sentence is read aloud. We hold these truths to be self-evident. The words, once spoken, hang in the air, transforming from simple ink into unbreakable law. The weight of those words is so immense that they must be absorbed in silence, their full meaning allowed to sink into the heavy stillness of the room. The fatigue of this intellectual labour is unique. It is not the exhaustion of the body, but the deep, bone-weary fatigue of the mind. Hours upon hours spent debating a single clause, a single philosophical principle, a single verb. You are tired from the relentless search for truth, tired from the constant need for consensus, tired from the knowledge that your mistakes, if they exist, will be preserved in ink for all eternity. Your job as the supporting scribe is one of absolute monotony. You prepare the paper, you sharpen the quills with a small precise knife, producing the soft feather-light ink of the blade on the hollow shaft. You monitor the ink, ensuring the flow is perfect. Your quiet focus is the foundation upon which the great ideas rest. You are the quiet, mechanical heart of the legislative process. The finished document, when it is finally approved, is not greeted with loud cheers here. It is greeted with a profound, weary hush, a shared sigh of relief and a terrifying realization of the commitment they have just sealed in ink. The loudest part of the revolution, you realize, is not the cannon fire, but the relentless, steady scratch of a pen writing the foundation of a new nation. Let the soft, steady scratch of the quill on the parchment settle your own busy thoughts. Allow the profound, intense quiet of intellectual labour to quiet your mind. You are merely writing. You are merely refining. You are simply preserving the truth in ink. The eloquent words written on the parchment in Philadelphia are now 300 miles away, and they offer you no comfort. You are at Valley Forge, and the revolution has distilled itself down to its most profound, silent, and physically exhausting form, the deep cold. You're a soldier in the Continental Army, but your daily reality is not combat. It is endurance. This is the war's slowest, most brutal moment, a period defined by an absolute draining immobility. You stand on duty, ankle deep in frozen, iron-hard mud, or perhaps covered by a thin, bitter layer of snow. Your boots are ragged, your coat is threadbare, and the cold is not a sensation. It is a perpetual, intrusive presence that has seeped into the very marrow of your bones. The greatest effort of your day is simply to not move, to remain on your assigned post, a silent, frozen sentinel in the unforgiving landscape. The silence of Valley Forge is immense, a suffocating quiet imposed by the cold itself. The air is too still to carry sound, and the deep snow muffles the ordinary noises of the camp. You hear no loud cheering, no marching drums, and few commands. You hear only the most fundamental, necessary sounds of suffering. The crack of a far-off tree limb breaking under the weight of the ice, the low, painful cough of a man in a nearby hut, and the constant, soft crunch of the frozen ground beneath your own shifting weight. Your mind is consumed not by patriotism, but by the relentless, wearing focus on survival. You're thinking about the fire, the low, smoky ember in your small shared hut, and the profound, distant dream of a full meal. You're thinking about the subtle ache in your toes and the terrifying numbness that could mean the beginning of frostbite. Your struggle is internal, a quiet, ceaseless war fought against the brutal physical facts of cold and hunger. You're performing the most profound act of the revolution, waiting without complaint. You look out at the vast, desolate landscape. The other men in the camp, thousands of them, are engaged in the same desperate, quiet vigil. They are not training. They are simply trying to exist. They are digging trenches that quickly refreeze, gathering scraps of wood, and sitting in profound shared silence, conserving the precious energy that might keep them alive until spring. The officers, too, are part of this profound stillness. They are not shouting orders. Their voices are low, tired, and focused only on the absolute essentials. 2 more men for wood duty. The next ration will be tomorrow. The entire command structure has been reduced to a quiet, bureaucratic effort to keep the flame of the army from being extinguished by the cold silence of the Pennsylvania winter. Your musket is cold, heavy, and useless. The powder is damp, and your hands are too numb to aim properly. The greatest threat is not a Redcoat charge. It is the slow, methodical process of your own body giving up. Yet you do not move from your post. You are rooted there by a quiet, shared understanding that the army's survival depends entirely on the appearance of strength, on the unbroken monotony of the watch. The only comfort you have is the vast, silent night sky. You look up and see the clear, sharp, unmoving stars. The same stars that shone over your family farm. The same stars that watch over the distant king. They are silent, beautiful, and utterly indifferent to your struggle. This vast cosmic silence puts your own smaller suffering into a profound, chilling perspective. Let the deep, cold stillness of the frozen ground settle your own mind now. Allow the weary, painful silence of the Valley Forge watch to quiet your thoughts. You are simply standing. You are simply enduring. You are simply waiting for the inevitable spring in the profound, consuming quiet of the deepest cold. The suffering at Valley Forge was physical, immediate, and painfully real, but the greatest tension of the revolution is not found on land. It is found here, in the vast, silent, indifferent ocean that separates the new world from the old. You are a civilian observer in a coastal city, or perhaps a frustrated delegate in Philadelphia, and your entire hope rests on a monumental, quiet gamble. Waiting for the Allies. The core of your anxiety is distance. You know that the powerful kingdoms of France and Spain possess the wealth, the navies, and the sheer military weight required to make independence a reality. But they are weeks away, months away, separated by a colossal, empty stretch of water that imposes an agonizing, inescapable slowness upon all hope. Your day is a profound, wearisome monotony of waiting for a ship. You find yourself staring out at the harbour, watching the water. The gentle whoosh-hush of the waves against the dock is the only constant sound. Every sail that appears on the horizon must be scrutinized, every mast counted, every flag identified. Each sail is a silent question mark, a brief, sharp surge of hope that quickly dissolves into the dull, familiar disappointment of another local fishing vessel or trading brig. This waiting is a unique form of torture. It is entirely passive. You cannot march to France. You cannot sail a diplomatic note faster than the wind allows. You are forced into a complete, profound surrender to the elements, a humbling realization that the fate of your nation rests not on your effort, but on the caprices of the Atlantic currents and the slow, heavy patience of European kings. You sit in the empty meeting halls, listening to the low, tired murmur of the delegates. They are not debating war strategies now. They are debating possibilities. Did the ship leave 3 weeks ago? Was it caught in a storm off the Azores? Did the King of France receive the last envoy? The entire political conversation is reduced to an analysis of the wind speed and the most recent weather reports. The only physical connection to the vital diplomatic game is a small, carefully sealed parchment letter sent from Benjamin Franklin in Paris. The paper is old, worn, and smells faintly of sea salt and foreign wax. The words within are guarded, diplomatic, and utterly lacking in urgency. They speak of cautious goodwill, of slow negotiations, of the need for more patience. You read the polite, careful phrasing, and you feel the immense weight of the European court. A slow, ancient bureaucracy that moves at a pace incomprehensible to the urgent needs of the new world. The silence that follows the reading of one of these letters is vast. It is the silence of a people who have done all they can do, and now must simply endure the silence of the sea. You imagine the vastness of that ocean, the empty stretch of water where your hopes are sailing. It is an immense, unfeeling void. The distance is not just a geographic measure. It is a profound psychological barrier that forces your mind into a state of deep, suspended animation. Your sleep is light, restless. constantly attuned to the non-sound of an approaching sail. Let the soft, hypnotic whoosh-hush of the waves against the shore settle your own mind now. Allow the deep passive fatigue of the diplomatic weight to wash over you. You're simply watching the horizon. You're simply enduring the slowness of the sea. You're the quiet, unwavering anchor, waiting for the inevitable slow arrival of the world's assistance. You are not on a great warship of the Continental Navy locked in a dramatic, thundering battle. You are on a small, fast-armed merchant vessel, a privateer, and your life is defined by the profound, monotonous silence of the sea and the patience required to ambush. Your existence is a quiet, continuous gamble. You're here to wage the economic war. Your true mission is not to seek out glory, but to patiently wait for weakness, to silently intercept the slow, rich flow of British commerce that sustains the King's armies. The atmosphere aboard the privateer is one of heavy, suspended animation. The greatest sound is the continuous rhythmic creak of the wooden hull as it slowly, endlessly rides the swells. The wood is always talking, a low, constant chorus of stress and movement that is the only proof your world is still intact. Your job for hours on end is simply to watch. You're perched high in the rigging or lying flat on the main deck, your eyes fixed on the empty horizon. The sea is an immense, unfeeling void of blues and greys, and your only task is to break the monotony of the view. The monotony itself is a weapon. It is a slow, relentless siege against your focus, forcing your mind into a profound, almost hypnotic state. The silence is often only broken by the simplest, most necessary sounds of seamanship. The low whistle of the wind in the lines, the soft slap of a rope against the mast, and the quiet, rhythmic slosh of the bilge water below deck. Everything is done with a minimum of noise, a constant, silent adherence to the principle of not giving away your position to the vast emptiness. The greatest part of your day is spent in profound, low-grade boredom. You're perpetually waiting for the small distant smudge of a sail that will signify a potential prize. The waiting forces your mind into a deep meditative state. You're not thinking about your life on land. You're thinking about the subtle texture of the rope in your hand, the way the light reflects on the water, the predictable movement of the ship. Your quiet is a form of discipline, a necessary defense against the madness of the sea's unchangeable sameness. When a sail is finally spotted, often after 2 days of the empty horizon, the response is a profound shared hush. The captain gives his orders in a low, tight whisper that barely carries across the deck. All movement stops, all noise ceases. The ship becomes a piece of floating driftwood, gliding silently towards its unsuspecting target. This is the moment of greatest tension, the profound collective holding of breath as the distance slowly agonizingly closes. The brief moment of battle, if it comes, is a sudden deafening chaotic flash of noise and smoke, the single loud note in a vast symphony of silence. But the most important part of the privateer's life is the aftermath. The slow, meticulous, silent work of transferring the cargo. This is done with quiet haste, with the sounds of heavy barrels and ropes being pulled tight. It is the quiet, heavy labour of commerce, now conducted in the service of war. Your entire existence is a contradiction. You are a legalised pirate, yet your life is one of immense, repetitive discipline. Your days are measured by the slow, continuous roll of the ship, and your success is measured by the sheer, quiet volume of your plunder. You are not a hero but a necessary monotonous cog in the economic engine of the revolution. Let the slow rhythmic creak of the ship's timbers settle your own thoughts now. Allow the vast, unfeeling silence of the ocean to quiet your mind. You are simply watching the horizon. You are simply enduring the slow, predictable roll of the sea. You are the quiet, patient predator, waiting for the one sail that will break the boredom. The great noise of the war is finally mercifully fading. You are here in the trenches outside Yorktown, and the conflict has resolved itself into a quiet, heavy, grinding process of inevitability. This is the last weight of the revolution. You're a soldier, But the fighting is no longer defined by dramatic charges or loud musket volleys. It is defined by spades, dirt, and silence. You're engaged in the methodical, repetitive labour of siege warfare, digging. You feel the rough wood of the spade handle in your weary hands. The sound that defines your existence now is the soft, rhythmic thud of dirt being thrown onto the parapet, followed by the deep, satisfying sound of the spade cutting into the damp earth. You're not thinking about the enemy. You are thinking only about the depth of the trench, the angle of the wall, and the constant dull ache in your back. The most extraordinary thing about this siege is the silence of the British. They are trapped within the inner defensive works. Their cannons fire only sporadically, a loud, defiant boom that quickly dies, swallowed by the vast earthworks surrounding them. Mostly they are silent. Their silence is not a sign of surrender, but a sign of resignation. It is a profound, heavy quiet that tells you they know the end is coming, and they are merely enduring the final, inevitable wait. You stand on duty in the trenches. The air is cold and damp, and the pervasive smell of wet earth and gunpowder residue clings to your uniform. You look across the open, torn ground that separates your lines from theirs. The distance is short, and you know there are hundreds of men facing you, enduring the same cold, the same fear, the same utter boredom of waiting. The true tension of this moment is the lack of action. You are tired of fighting, tired of marching, and utterly tired of the cold. The most urgent desire is for the fighting to simply stop. You are not waiting for a battle, you are waiting for a decision that is being made in silence, miles away, by the commanders who hold the final signed documents. Then one quiet morning the sound changes. It is not the boom of a cannon, it is the sound of a single drum beating a slow, unsteady rhythm. This drum beat is not a call to battle, it is a soft, hesitant parley drum. It is the sound of surrender. The sound is so unexpected, so quiet, that you strain your ears, trying to comprehend the break in the monotony. You watch as a single officer, followed by a drummer boy, steps out onto the ravaged earth. The drummer beats the slow, sad rhythm of a defeated army. And then, the ultimate silence, the drum stops. The entire landscape, both armies, the Allied French, the American forces, falls into a profound, terrifying, heavy hush. It is the silence that confirms that the world has, in that instant, irrevocably changed. The surrender itself is conducted in this overwhelming quiet. There are no shouts of triumph, no massive celebrations yet. There is only the slow, methodical thud of the British soldiers laying down their muskets, one by one, a sound of heavy, final resignation. It is a quiet, weary sound of a war that has finally, slowly, completely exhausted itself. Let the heavy, expectant silence of the final siege settle your own mind now. Allow the slow, methodical rhythm of the digging to quiet your thoughts. You are simply waiting for the inevitable peace. You are simply watching the final moment of silence that breaks the long war. The thunder is gone. The silence is now complete, and it is a silence so profound that it feels almost unreal. The final, immense silence of a war that has entirely exhausted itself. You're not celebrating. You're simply walking. You're one of the soldiers returning home, or perhaps a civilian watching the returning troops. Your body is a vessel of absolute, deep-seated fatigue. The 3 years, 5 years, or 8 years of war have distilled your entire existence down to the simple, rhythmic act of putting one foot in front of the other. The weight of your musket is gone, replaced by the weight of your own tired body. The sound that defines this moment is the slow, quiet crunch of your boots on the dirt road, a sound that is both utterly personal and deeply therapeutic. It is the sound of moving without a command, of walking without a destination imposed by a general. You are walking towards the final, quiet certainty of home. The peace you find is not the sudden, loud relief of a celebration. It is a slow, quiet unfolding, a realization that the constant low-grade fear that has defined your daily existence for years is finally truly gone. The silence no longer signifies a hidden enemy or a waiting ambush. It simply signifies rest. You return to your town and the view is different. The buildings are worn, the land is tired, and the people are quietly worn down by the long deprivation. The atmosphere is one of profound shared weariness. There is no frantic shouting, only the slow, methodical sound of quiet work. You hear the gentle clink of a hammer rebuilding a fence, the soft shh of a shovel turning earth in a garden, and the low, constant murmur of families reconnecting. These are the sounds of peace, mundane, quiet, deeply necessary sounds that had been drowned out by the noise of the conflict. Your mind, so long trained to listen for the sharp, sudden sounds of threat, the trumpet, the cannon, the cracking twig, now struggles to adjust to the gentle persistence of the ordinary. You find yourself sitting by the fire, simply listening to the sound of its quiet collapse, and finding in that sound a deep, immeasurable comfort. Your greatest challenge is the transition from the constant communal chaos of army life to the deep, absolute solitude of home. You have to learn how to be quiet again, how to be alone again, how to fill the vast silence left by the absence of constant vigilance. The deep, heavy quiet of your own house is the final field you must conquer. The final silent triumph of the American Revolution is this: the right to endure the mundane, the right to spend your days in the quiet, predictable rhythm of work without the constant, invisible pressure of a distant, abstract power. It is the right to have a silence that you can trust. You have given your body and your mind to the great, loud cause. Now, you are home, and your final act of the revolution is to allow yourself to be entirely, profoundly still. Let the slow, rhythmic crunch of your own tired footsteps on the road home settle your own mind now. Allow the deep, quiet satisfaction of a job profoundly finished to wash over you. The long watch is over. The silence has returned, and it is a silence you can finally trust. And so, our journey for tonight comes to a quiet close. The story lingers, like the last glow of candlelight, as you drift further into rest. If these gentle wanderings bring you peace, I invite you to like and subscribe so that whenever you wish, you may return and we can travel together once more. For now, dear listener, may your dreams be kind and your night be restful. Until next time.